The evening lights of downtown Atlanta glowed like melted gold against the skyline as cars glided past high-end boutiques and hotels. Among them stood Le Monte, a restaurant that prided itself on luxury, exclusivity, and refinement. Its glass doors reflected the warm shimmer of chandeliers inside, while a maitre d' in a perfectly tailored suit greeted guests with an air of practiced sophistication. Inside, a low hum of laughter mixed with soft jazz. Couples in evening wear toasted to anniversaries. Businessmen discussed deals over steaks that cost more than most people's weekly groceries. Everything about the place screamed money, class, and prestige. And in the middle of this calm, controlled perfection, something was about to happen that would test the very soul of the establishment. It began when a family of three stepped through the entrance. A man in a crisp shirt and blazer, his wife in an elegant emerald dress, and their young teenage daughter holding a small camera close to her chest. Their faces carried the kind of warmth that drew attention, the kind of quiet pride that came from hard work and dignity. But the moment they walked in, several heads turned, some with curiosity, some with quiet disapproval, and one in particular with concealed irritation. The restaurant manager, a man named Bradley Shore, watched from behind the counter. He was tall, fair-skinned, and polished in the way of someone who believed image meant everything. To him, Le Monte wasn't just a restaurant, it was his domain. And in his mind, there were certain types of people who didn't belong in that domain. He noticed the family immediately. He saw their dark skin, the camera in the girl's hands, and the slightly worn edges of the man's shoes. Tiny details his judgmental eye picked apart in seconds. Without hesitation, he adjusted his tie and approached the hostess stand, intercepting the hostess before she could greet them. The father smiled, polite and confident, and told the hostess that they had a reservation for Evans, party of three. The woman checked her tablet, confirmed it, and was about to escort the men when Bradley leaned over her shoulder. In a smooth but cold tone, he told the family there must have been a mistake. No reservation for Evans exists tonight. The father showed his phone with the email confirmation, the date and time clearly visible. Still, Bradley shook his head, saying it wasn't in the system and that the restaurant was fully booked for the evening. His smile was professional, but his eyes gave him away. Distant, dismissive, almost mocking. The family looked around. Half of the tables sat empty. The wife, whose name was Elena, gently pointed this out. Her voice carried no anger, just a calm question. But Bradley's tone hardened. He explained that those tables were reserved for premium members, and that the restaurant maintained a certain clientele standard. The words were vague, but sharp. Elena understood exactly what he meant. Her husband, Darius, felt a familiar burn rise in his chest, one that came not from embarrassment, but from restrained anger. Their daughter, Ava, clutched her camera tighter. Her innocent eyes darted from one adult to another. She didn't fully understand what was happening, but she could feel it. The shift in energy, the subtle cruelty that made her mother's smile fade. Darius swallowed the lump in his throat. He had been here before, not in this restaurant, but in countless other places where being polite didn't seem to matter, where dignity was mistaken for defiance. He wanted to fight back, to raise his voice, but he also knew what that would look like. A loud, black man in an expensive restaurant. He could already picture the security call. Instead, he spoke softly, explaining again that they had made the reservation 3 days ago, paid the deposit online, and even received a confirmation message. But Bradley wasn't listening. He simply said he couldn't seat them and suggested they try somewhere more casual down the street. Elena's heart cracked at those words. Somewhere more casual, he might as well have said somewhere more fitting for you. She turned to her husband, her voice trembling as she suggested they just leave. But Darius hesitated. He didn't want to teach his daughter that walking away was always the answer when faced with disrespect. As the tension hung heavy in the air, a couple nearby, older, white, and dressed in pearls and navy suits, watched curiously. The woman frowned and whispered to her husband. They both knew exactly what was happening, but said nothing. That silence was worse than words. Bradley forced a stiff smile and excused himself to check the system again. He turned his back, muttering under his breath about how these people never understood reservation policies. The hostess, visibly uncomfortable, apologized quietly to the Evans family and said she didn't know what was happening. Their name was definitely on the list earlier that day. While Bradley disappeared into the office, Darius tried to keep his composure. He knelt slightly to speak to his daughter, telling her that sometimes people act mean because of their own ignorance, not because of who you are. Ava nodded, but tears shimmered in her eyes. The minutes stretched. Other guests glanced at them awkwardly, pretending not to stare. The soft jazz that once filled the air now seemed distant, like it belonged to another world. When Bradley returned, he put on his practiced, insincere smile again. He said that after double-checking, he could confirm there was no reservation and that unfortunately they couldn't be seated. He even added that the kitchen was running low on certain dishes and that it wouldn't be worth their time anyway. The insult was clear. Darius's patience finally cracked. He took a slow breath, the kind people take right before they lose control, and said quietly that this wasn't about reservations or the kitchen, it was about prejudice. Bradley's expression changed just for a second before the arrogance returned. He denied the accusation, saying that the restaurant welcomed everyone, but that standards are standards. Elena placed her hand on her husband's arm before he could say more. She whispered for them to go. So they did, heads high, hearts heavy, leaving behind a room full of people pretending not to have seen what just happened. Outside, the cool night air felt heavier than before. Ava wiped her eyes. She asked her father why people like that still existed, why kindness was so rare in some hearts. Darius knelt, took her small hands, and told her that how others treat you says more about them than it ever could about you. Elena wrapped her arms around both of them. They promised each other that this moment wouldn't break them. It would just remind them of the work still needed in the world. What Bradley didn't know, however, was that this family wasn't just any ordinary group of diners. Darius Evans was one of 3 undercover reviewers for Eats Uncovered, one of the largest digital food review platforms in the country. Every few weeks, he and other critics visited high-end restaurants under disguise, rating not just the food, but also the service, treatment, and inclusivity. Their reviews often reached millions online, and they never announced themselves in advance. But on that night, Darius hadn't intended to write a review. It was meant to be just dinner, a peaceful evening with his wife and daughter. That was until Bradley turned it into something else entirely. The next morning, Darius sat in his home office, staring at the blank screen on his laptop. The emotions from the night before hadn't faded. They simmered quietly in his chest. He thought about letting it go, about moving on. But then he remembered Ava's teary eyes and the way Elena's smile faltered in front of their daughter. He began to type. What started as a few sentences of frustration turned into paragraphs of painful honesty. He wrote about discrimination wrapped in politeness, about exclusion disguised as standards. He described the setting, the tone, the words Bradley used. He wrote not with anger, but with truth, measured, clear, and powerful. By noon, he had posted the review on Eats Uncovered. It wasn't just a complaint. It was a mirror held up to privilege, the kind that hides behind uniforms and customer service smiles. He signed it anonymously, as he always did, and clicked Publish. Within hours, the post began gaining traction. Comments flooded in. People shared their own experiences of subtle racism in supposedly elite spaces. Some recognized the restaurant immediately from the description. By evening, #LeMonte-discrimination was trending on local Twitter. Meanwhile, inside the restaurant, Bradley had no idea. He was busy ensuring the silverware was perfectly aligned and that every server used the proper greeting script. He bragged to the owner that his management was the reason for Le Monte's flawless reputation. But that illusion was about to crumble. The next day, a sharply dressed woman arrived at the restaurant for brunch. She introduced herself as Sophia Lane, an official from the city's hospitality board. She mentioned that Eats Uncovered had published a concerning review about racial bias at Le Monte. The owner's face went pale. Bradley stood frozen, pretending to be confused. The woman didn't stay long, but her words left a shadow over the place. There would be an investigation, and if the claims were proven true, the restaurant could lose its luxury certification and sponsorship deals. That was just the beginning. Over the next few days, the story spread beyond Atlanta. Local news stations picked it up. Bloggers discussed it. Even a few celebrities commented on the review's message of dignity and respect. Le Monte's reputation began to fracture. Reservation numbers dropped, and sponsors quietly backed away. Bradley felt the pressure, but refused to believe he had done anything wrong. In his mind, he was being punished for enforcing standards. He told anyone who would listen that the accusations were exaggerated, that people were just looking for something to be offended by. But deep down, even he could feel the truth gnawing at his conscience. He replayed the moment over and over. The look in the little girl's eyes, the quiet disappointment in the father's voice. For the first time, it wasn't pride he felt. It was unease. Still, his ego wouldn't let him admit it. As the week went on, an email arrived from corporate. A major partnership event was scheduled for Saturday night, and to repair their image, they would be hosting a special private dinner for select guests, including food critics and hospitality reviewers from across the country. Bradley saw it as his chance for redemption, or rather to prove that he hadn't done anything wrong in the first place. He vowed that the event would be flawless. Every guest would leave impressed. What he didn't know was that fate was about to bring someone back through those glass doors, someone whose presence would expose everything he had tried to hide. Saturday night arrived like a storm waiting to break. Le Monte gleamed brighter than ever before. Every light bulb had been polished, every table set with flawless precision, every server rehearsing the same greeting until their smiles hurt. The owner wanted nothing less than perfection. The restaurant's reputation hung by a thread after that viral review, and tonight's private dinner was their last chance to sew it back together. Bradley moved through the dining room, adjusting wine glasses by a fraction of an inch, barking quiet orders at waiters and checking that the custom gold-embossed menus were aligned perfectly. To him, this wasn't just another night. It was redemption. If he impressed the food critics tonight, the controversy would fade, his name would be cleared, and Le Monte could reclaim its prestige. He wore his finest suit, pressed so sharply it looked almost new. The air around him carried that usual mix of authority and arrogance, but beneath it was tension, a fragile awareness that one misstep could destroy everything. At 7 p.m. sharp, the special guests began to arrive. A photographer snapped pictures near the bar. Soft music swelled. The servers whispered nervously as a few recognizable local critics entered. Faces Bradley had studied online, their reviews known for making or breaking fine dining spots across Atlanta. Everything was going according to plan. Then, just as he turned to greet the next arrival, his smile froze. Through the glass doors walked a family of 3, dressed elegantly, with the same quiet grace he remembered all too well. The man's face, calm but unreadable, the woman beside him, poised and confident, and between them their teenage daughter, now carrying a more professional-looking camera slung around her shoulder. It was them. The same family he had turned away not long ago, the same faces that haunted his thoughts at night, even if he'd never admit it. For a moment, Bradley's composure slipped. His heart thudded once hard before he forced a grin back onto his face. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe they didn't recognize him. Maybe they had just come to eat, not to cause trouble. But when the hostess greeted them warmly and ushered them toward the reserved VIP table, one of the best seats in the restaurant, Bradley's certainty began to unravel. The owner himself appeared, stepping out from his office with a wide smile. He greeted the family personally, shaking hands and thanking them for coming. The scene made Bradley's chest tighten. Guests didn't get that kind of treatment unless they were important. The family sat. The atmosphere around our table was different, calm, confident, powerful. The servers were suddenly on high alert, their movements sharper, their eyes flicking between the family and the manager as if sensing something unsaid. Bradley approached the owner quietly, confusion prickling in his chest. "Sir, those guests, you know them?" The owner gave him a quick, almost scolding look. "Of course I do. That's Darius and Elena Evans. They're some of the top contributors for Eats Uncovered, the platform that posted that review about us." Bradley's stomach dropped. The air in his lungs seemed to vanish. "Them?" he asked, his voice barely audible. The owner didn't notice his panic. He was too busy preparing to charm his guests. "Yes, corporate reached out to them directly, invited them here as a gesture of goodwill. We're trying to clear our name. This dinner could fix everything if we impress them." Bradley's throat went dry. He nodded mechanically, but every inch of his body felt suddenly heavy. The very people he'd once humiliated now sat in the finest seats of the restaurant, guests of honor. He straightened his tie, forced a breath, and decided he had to act normal, pretend nothing happened. Maybe, he told himself, they wouldn't remember him. Maybe they saw so many managers that night they wouldn't recognize one face in the crowd. But when he finally walked over to greet their table, all 3 pairs of eyes met his, and he knew. The father looked at him without anger, only with quiet recognition. The mother's expression was steady, reserved, the kind of calm that unsettled more than fury ever could. And the daughter, now a little older, stared at him like she was still trying to understand how adults could act so cruelly. Bradley introduced himself politely, stumbling slightly over his words. He said he'd be personally overseeing their service tonight, The father thanked him, his tone warm but distant, as if extending courtesy to someone who hadn't earned it. Each course was served with precision. Every dish arrived beautifully plated, every wine pairing perfectly matched. Yet the more perfect things seemed, the worse Bradley felt. Every movement of theirs, their laughter, their whispered remarks, the camera flashes as the daughter photographed each course, reminded him that he was no longer in control. The power dynamic had shifted completely. And then came the moment he'd been dreading. Halfway through the meal, the owner approached their table to personally thank them for attending and asked if everything was to their satisfaction. Darius smiled, complimenting the food, the presentation, and the staff's professionalism. His voice was genuine. But then, softly, he added, "It's a very different experience from the last time we came here." The room fell quiet. The owner's smile faltered just slightly. Bradley froze. Elena set down her fork, her eyes calm but unwavering. She said that the last time they had visited, their reservation had been lost, and they were told there were no tables available, even as empty ones surrounded them. Her tone never rose. It didn't have to. The truth was sharp enough. The owner turned sharply to Bradley. "Is that true?" he asked, his voice tight. Bradley's mouth opened, but no words came out. His thoughts scrambled. The faces at nearby tables turned toward him. For the first time, the image he'd built of himself, the flawless, composed professional, crumbled in public view. Darius spoke again, not with anger, but with measured honesty. He said he had wanted to let it go, that his family wasn't looking to hurt anyone, but when a place that claimed to represent luxury treated people differently based on skin color, it wasn't just about one meal. It was about the message it sent. Every word landed like a hammer wrapped in silk. Bradley's chest tightened. He tried to defend himself, said he must have been mistaken, that it had been a misunderstanding, that the system had glitched, but no one looked convinced. The owner's face turned from shock to quiet fury. "Bradley," he said through clenched teeth, "in this restaurant, every guest is supposed to be treated with respect. Every guest." The silence that followed was suffocating. Bradley's voice cracked as he tried to apologize, but Darius stopped him gently. He said, "It's not about apologies anymore. It's about learning." And then, in a move no one expected, Darius smiled, a genuine, forgiving smile. He told the owner that they would still write their review, and they would make sure to include everything: the food, the service, and the way the restaurant handled its mistakes. The owner thanked him quietly, but Bradley could hear the unspoken weight behind his words. His job, his reputation, everything hung in the balance of that one review. When the family finished their meal, they stood to leave. The entire staff seemed to watch them go, as if witnessing some quiet reckoning. Bradley stood near the exit, unsure whether to speak or hide. As they passed, Elena gave him a small nod, neither kind nor cruel, just human. It was that grace that stung the most. The door closed behind them, and the hum of conversation slowly returned. But Bradley stood motionless, feeling smaller than he'd ever felt. The next morning, the new review went live. It was titled, "When Service Redefines Respect." The post began by describing how Le Monte had discriminated against them weeks earlier, but then detailed how the restaurant had since shown humility, accountability, and change. The words were fair, even generous. It didn't name Bradley directly, but anyone who had read the first article understood who it referred to. The review ended with a simple, powerful line. True luxury isn't about chandeliers or price tags. It's about how you make people feel welcome, no matter who they are. The internet erupted again, but this time the tone was different. Thousands praised the Evans family for their grace. Many thanked Eats Uncovered for showing that justice doesn't always come through revenge, but through truth. Le Monte slowly began to recover its reputation, not through denial, but through learning. As for Bradley, he resigned quietly 2 weeks later. He couldn't stand walking through those golden doors anymore, knowing what they represented. For the first time, he started to reflect, not on his fall, but on what had built his pride in the first place. He began volunteering at a community food program, where the people he once looked down on taught him more about service than any fine dining school ever had. Months later, Le Monte reopened under new management with a new motto etched in gold near the entrance. It read, "Hospitality begins with humanity." And one evening, as the Evans family walked past that sign on their way to dinner somewhere else, Ava stopped for a moment, took a photo of it, and smiled. Her father asked what she was thinking. She said softly, "I think some people really can change." He smiled back, placing a hand on her shoulder as they walked on together under the city lights. Treat everyone with respect, because you never know who they are, what they've been through, or how life might turn the tables one day. Kindness costs nothing, but arrogance can cost everything. If you want more content like this, then hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our videos. Thanks for watching.